Thanks, Ritesh, for being here and sharing your insights. And for those who are watching this video, this is a weekly series that we are doing it. This is the episode 3 of our Scrum Master and a Product Owner Career series. And here we discuss about the career progression. What are the interview experiences for the Scrum Masters and the Product Owner? And in each series, you'll be getting straight from the trenches on how you can take your career to the next leap. We have got many such events lined up for the upcoming events and the recorded events. You can check our website, targetagility.com, and there you'll be finding out the details. So let's get started.
Hello everyone. Thanks for your time for joining. A little about myself. My name is Ritesh Mande. I'm working in a BFSI domain for past 11 years, and I have exposures into business analyst and product owner. For past 3 years, also I'm also into candidate hirings, and I would be sharing today my experiences, what exactly we look for while hiring for the business analyst and product owner role. So, first of all, thanks, Anand, for giving us this forum in order to share our experience so it can be helpful to other product owners and the aspiring product owners.
Ritesh, you have already shared your experience. You have been interviewing product owners for quite some time. The first question that comes to my mind is, what do you look for in a product owner, candidate product owner, when you're interviewing them?
Um, yeah, I expect that this is a curiosity about each and every person involved in this discussion. And what exactly we look for is having a balanced approach while hiring any product owner candidate. So, in terms, for example, whether a candidate is aware about the product ownership roles and responsibilities, if they have an in-depth understanding, then we go for the next step, that is the agile in-depth understanding of the agile core concepts. And later to that, we also evaluate the behavioral and the domain aspect of any candidate.
Okay, so you're talking about whether they have got the product owner mindset. What do you want to share? Like, what kind of question do you ask, and how do you identify they have it?
Yeah, in that terms, what we analyze, so for, because I've mostly hired for the business analyst and product owner role, and I've also experienced that at times, people do mention that they are into the product ownership, but they are actually not. So in order to evaluate that aspect of what I usually deal with is I firstly go with the understanding of like whether a candidate is aware on the differences between the business analyst and the product owner or not. It is in order to understand like whether they actually have the exposure to that specific role or not. So that is my overall analysis. While when they'll tell me about how exactly they have worked, what is their day in day out, what have been their exposure into the handling their development teams and the other business stakeholders. So with that aspects, I evaluate that whether that specific candidate is into business analyst or a product owner or not.
That's interesting. Would you like to share some example, like any candidate where that person might have said, "I'm a product owner," but you would have realized through some question or some experience sharing that, "Hey, no, he's not actually a product owner; he's actually a business analyst."
Yeah. So what happens at times that the people who are into the role, they actually do not know what exactly the role they are playing into it. So at times they do play a role of a dual aspects like the business analyst and product owner. So this happened to one of our interview where the candidate was actually handling more responsibility than a business analyst. So I believe that somebody who is already doing a business analysis and having a more exposure towards the product, but they actually do not know they are handling some more responsibilities like participating more into the backlog refinements. Actually they are leading the product backlogs a lot on behalf of maybe their respective leaders. So we actually got to know that this candidate is applying for a business analyst, but he's having more exposure into the product owners as well. Okay, so with that aspect, I got to know ki, okay, maybe he's just not aware that he's handling additional roles, and he's having more better prospects, just more than a business analyst.
Oh, so that was the other way around. Like the person was applying for a business analyst turned out to
Actually,
be a
yeah,
product owner. And I'm
yeah,
sure it happens the other way around as well. Like a person is applying
precisely.
for a product owner and may end up actually being a business analyst.
Right. So yeah, that has also been experienced where they have maybe just after going through a lot of job descriptions and understanding the peer roles in theory, they do mention that they have participated into product strategy, product vision, defining the product roadmap, but they actually do not have a core understanding about these core concepts. Okay, whereas they are very good in the business analysis in terms of the requirement gathering, stakeholder management, handling the developments, handling all the change requests and all. They were very good into the one aspect of business analysis, but they portrayed that they are good into product ownership, but they were not having that exposure. So we'll try to evaluate both the aspects, how both are similar, and also what best can be done in order to achieve the product owner role.
All right. I didn't know there's so much unfolding behind the scene in the psyche of Ritesh.
Thank you.
You also mentioned about behavioral. Like, what kind of question do you ask to understand whether, like, what do you mean by behavioral to ask that way?
In that aspect, what I usually do is I try to evaluate the mindset of a product owner. So, first of all, whether how good they are into the stakeholder management, how better they are into proposing a solution to the challenges that they are being faced. So, I have a couple of favorite questions that I present while interviewing, and I ensure that if a candidate is hiring is getting hired, they should be answering this question, because I give a more weightage to these couple of questions which are special to me. So for example, there could be a case, where there is an admin business POC, and he or she wants that a certain set of requirements should be implemented into the upcoming sprint. But whereas the development lead is actually, very busy and very tight with the bandwidth and is unable to accept any new requirements. So what should be the approach of a business analyst or a product owner in order to handle such situations? So this is one of my favorite question. Um, Answering to that, firstly, I'll go through the incorrect answers that I usually get by a business analyst and product owner, where their approach is, uh, just to postpone the requirements into the next sprints, or maybe speak to the developers and the development lead whether they are able to add on more folks to the team just to get this urgent requirement. In
That's the
such
usual
scenario,
answer, right? That's the usual answer
yeah,
people
that's a
give.
usual answer. But what's my take over here is, rather that a business analyst or product owner should have a solution based approach, right? Because obviously the development team or the rest of the team will always have a tight bandwidth in terms of their day-to-day activities. So it would be very tough to accommodate any new request. So my take over here is whether that candidate is able to approach in terms of deprioritizing the ongoing requirements, and if this requirement, the new requirements that are coming in, are actually critical in nature in terms of the cost implications, say for example in terms of regulatory aspects, and we have to go live to a certain date, uh, that means that those requirements should be included into the sprint. Okay, so if a candidate is able to provide a solution in such manner, then there would be some additional point to the candidate that okay, he or she is on a right track. Plus, also I believe that a candidate should have an approach in terms of defining the value versus size, or a value versus effort aspect. So this could be a possible scenario where the requirements that are coming up is actually critical in nature. So obviously that should be evaluated, and it should be deprioritized into the ongoing sprint. But whereas I also mentioned that a business POC is admin, so that means that could be a scenario where the requirements are actually not critical in nature, but the business POC is feeling that it is critical in nature.
That's where
So
stakeholder management comes.
exactly. So in that cases, a product owner has to make the business POC understand that, okay, these upcoming changes could impact the ongoing sprint, and also it will impact the sprint goals. Also, it might have a other technical delivery delays into the sprint goals as well, right? So why? Because we have not evaluated the risk behind those new requirements. So we have to clearly call out in such scenarios, and also we have to get involved with the other stakeholders, the seniors, where they can add more experience and more values in terms of decision making, whether that new requirement should be included in the sprint or not.
Wow, that one simple scenario covered so many things about your product backlog management, your stakeholder management, and how do you communicate the goal.
Right. And on a similar note, I usually look after, say, for example, if a product owner is having extensive years of experience, and their resume seems very promising, and we feel that, okay, the person can be a very good fitment for the role that we are hiring.
Yeah.
So in that case scenario, I'll go with another level of questioning where it will be more of a stressful scenario on a product owner, but this is just to evaluate whether that product owner can do more better in terms of what exactly they are doing, and in future can be a really an asset for the company. So in that manner, I usually ask that, okay, this is a day zero, and I am somebody who's looking to develop maybe a e-commerce website, or maybe a store, online store, where just to sell out our books. Okay, but down the line, three months, we are in plan to go for a product launch of the same website. Now, on day zero, we are having this discussion. What would be the approach of a product owner on a day two or a day three, where product owner would go back and come back with the homework? What exactly can be a best solution for this scenario? So the answers that I usually get, okay, I'll go through the traditional approach, where we'll be doing all the requirement gathering, then we'll do the requirement walkthrough, then we'll engage the development, then we'll do the chat sessions,
Usual.
etc., etc. Those are the usual answer. But right now, the world is changing so dynamic, and it is so fast paced, that the project and the product is somehow getting amalgamated, right? So the mindset is slowly and also very abruptly changing, because we have to get failed fast and get the result more better as soon as we learn more, right? So in that manner, what my approach is, that what a product owner or a business analyst should propose here. Firstly, after obviously getting the first inputs from the business, he or she should focus on whether it is a make versus buy decision. Okay, there could be a vendors who can do this more task more efficiently rather than developing in-house, right? There should be an approach whether, once we clarified whether it is a make versus buy, say for example, we are going for a make decision, we are developing everything in-house, right? Then there should be a sort of a prototyping that a product owner should come up with, that what exactly, what should be the vision of the website that we are planning for. So this would actually give the business people the understanding that, okay, the product owner has understood all the requirements, has come up with something, a prototype which is good in terms of visual, and it is actually in parallel with the requirements that have been given by the business, and followed by the prototyping. Then obviously, because we were, if you'll go back to my scenario, that we are having only 3 months of bandwidth to
Mm.
develop a product. So there should be something which is called a minimum viable product. Okay, so that would actually help us to achieve the deadline of launching the product in the next 3 months. And obviously, the minimum viable product will ensure that we are having all the key aspects into our product, where any user should not face the issue while purchasing a simple book.
Got it, Ritesh. So in this one question itself, we are checking whether the prospective candidate has a good mindset on MVP as well as cost benefit analysis, buy versus build
Make. Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So prospective candidates should be also exploring. Your interviewer might not be explicitly asking you, tell me where have you used MVP or where have you done this buy versus build analysis. They might be giving you a scenario masqueraded as in this format, which just now Ritesh mentioned, and you have to pick out, uh, can you consider MVP over here? And,
Yeah.
and trust me, interviewers love that.
Yeah, and adding to that, Anand, there has been a scenario where people are not aware about this concept of MVP. Probably many of the business analysts and the product owner are actually proposing this solution in their day-to-day environment, where there are some kind of a workaround, say probably some scripts that we usually write up and give it to the business in order to run and get the work done. Because obviously those requirements came in on priority, and it was very high heat environment where we have to deliver some working product. So they are actually doing that, but they are not aware about that. Okay, this is called something MVP. Okay, some workaround that we are giving to the business or and to the people or to the clients actually is an MVP. So they are actually not exposed to this concept of MVP.
Because that's how traditionally the organizations work.
Precisely.
Yeah. And one more thing, Pritesh, I was wondering, like, generally for Scrum Master, you can be domain agnostic, right? You
Right.
can be working on a financial and you may end up being onto a telecom. But for product owners, they need to have some domain understanding, right?
Right.
How do you understand whether they have the domain understanding?
Um, I give a good weightage to the domain understanding because it actually helps the product owner to put the right step forward. And why I believe that, because if a product owner is having exposure to the insight of the business, okay, he or she would be able to communicate better with the business, with the developments, and the other internal or external stakeholders. I usually evaluate on terms of very beginner level domain understanding. Say, for example, I am into a BFSI domain, and I usually evaluate on a topics like, okay, what are the awareness about the capital market, okay, and what exactly exposure do you have in a trade life cycle? So because I have been more onto the side of the ETD tradings, and the also the investment banking, I usually see if a person is having a okay level one of understanding, then I'll gradually move on to the level two. So in generic scenario, the beginner level of understanding, usually I get a answer for a capital market. Okay, there is a primary and then there is a secondary market. If a candidate is actually giving a right answer to that, then I'll go to the next level. Probably I'll ask, okay, what are the other type of offerings into the capital market apart from the IPOs and the secondary market? So these types of generic questions, and which can be easily found over the public domain, I try to assess their at least beginner level of understanding. And obviously, if any candidate is having more than 10 years of experience, then we go extensive in nature in order to understand their, the product or the asset class understanding, whether they have exposure into the different products like, for example, equities or swaps or CDS in the BFSI domain that we usually hire.
Hmm. So you keep on going, uh, uncovering layer by layer like an onion, peeling on the onion.
Precisely.
So you mentioned about behavioral, that whether this person understand product management, which has stakeholder management, product backlog management, MVP. You also try to see whether they have a domain knowledge because, of course, they have to work with the business very closely. What about agile? So while we understand that there's a Scrum Master who takes care of all these Scrum events and artifacts and other stuffs, but what do you feel like product owners should also be having that understanding on Scrum or Agile as such, and how do you find out whether they have it?
That's an interesting question because I've been interviewing the candidates from a long time, and I've assessed that many people do not know the start point and end point of agiles, or the commonly used and the most famous scrum ceremonies. So in order to evaluate their in-depth understanding, usually my proficiency, I believe, should be beginner for a less than 10 years of experience, and for a more than 10 years, it should be intermediate proficiency that any candidate should answer. And actually, that helps to evaluate whether that person has ever worked in the SDLC or not. Just to announce that SDLC is software development lifecycle that we are talking about. So in I'll just throw up a question where I'll ask them their day in day out, which will actually help me to understand their existing projects that they are working on, and also their daily participation with the different stakeholders or the development teams. So usually I get the answer where they are participating into the daily scrums. They are after the sprint is over, they will do the sprint reviews and they'll do the sprint retrospective. But at times the answers are not in sync.
Hmm.
So, as a hiring team, what we expect that if a candidate is answering such question, uh, it's good to probably brief for the day in day out, maybe in a couple of lines. But it's better to go with the start point, like product backlog refinements, then go for the scrum ceremonies like sprint planning, daily scrums, sprint reviews, retrospective. And if any in-depth question is coming up, say for example, what exactly is done in sprint planning, then they should go more in depth. So firstly, the layer should be on a higher level where they are covering all the key topics and then going into the depth of it. Okay, what exactly is expected from the interviewers. So that's my usual approach in order to understand their entire agile experiences.
So many things, right?
Yeah.
So, Ritesh, I'm hearing that you assess for their behavioral. That means whether they have the product management understanding, you assess domain understanding, and you assess agile understanding as well.
Right.
If you will, and I'm not sure whether you do that, what is the weightage that you give for these three different competencies?
Usually I give more weightage to the agile and the behavioral aspect. So if I have to rate it down, it would be more of a 30-30 contribution, because out of 100, the 30 score will go for agile and 30 would go to the behavioral, because that actually tells the overall contribution of yours in your ongoing projects or the previous experiences. So because that is common in nature, okay, the processes might change from organization to organization, but the agile knowledge and the behavioral, your approach towards the solution, will be consistent across, and obviously it should be kept evolving. So that is the weightage that I give for agile and behavioral. So 30 plus 30 would be the 60. About understanding of the product owner role, I would go for a 20 score, and then obviously for the domain, I'll go for another 20. So that's my usual scoring of doing the interview for any candidate.
All right. So even if you have lesser domain knowledge, emphasize more on your product management and your agile background because that could be the differentiator.
Right. And
So,
I always suggest to my young fellows, and also the having somebody who's having extensive experience, that it's good to build the core competencies and core understanding, and then add the decoratives. So once we have a core framework with us or a core structure with us, then we can add on more additional skills. Say for example, Power BIs, learning SQLs, and adding more skills which are add-ons and could be very helpful in your day-to-day.
yeah, of course, if you have got two candidates with almost similar profile, then these could be a make or a break deal, like understanding of a
Precisely.
Power BI or different kind of a tools.
Precisely.
Ritesh. So we discussed a lot what goes in your mind when you're evaluating and what are the criterias. But would you want to share what other questions do you ask? Basically, we're not looking for the answer, of course, but what is the intent behind asking those questions?
Um, I think it's a opener question for me, which I usually pitch in for any candidate in order to give them a room to to drive in their own path. So tell me about your experience in brief, or tell me about yourself. So this I intentionally put up in front of any candidate so that they can get comfortable while having this discussion. I usually do not target the interview as an interview. I usually prefer it to have a discussion so that I can get the open response while having a discussion, and also to avoid the nervousness. Apart from that, as I mentioned, the day in day out of their business analyst and a peer role, this is actually to understand whether they have actual experience or working experience into that skills or no. Then I usually pitch the major challenges that they are facing in their day-to-day business. Okay, and this is to understand whether they have a problem-solving attitude, how do they come up to the challenges, and how do they do, again, the stakeholder management, etc. Whereas I also look for, what are their professional aspirations, maybe in the next 5 years or 3 years. This is in order to understand, whether the candidate is looking for upskilling or no, plus their long-term stability and the commitment for the organization, whether they'll turn up to the as an asset for the organization.
Hmm.
Apart from that, I also look for, I usually ask this question at the end of the interview, that what do you think, what are the self improvement areas in yourself. So this actually helps us to give the reflection in ourselves and do the self assessment. Maybe, if we each one of us have some weakness areas, and it's good to identify that and get it strengthened more, so that we can do more better in our life. So these are the kind of questions that I usually look after, so that candidate can be more exposed to, their experiences, and also analyze themselves more, so that they can do more better.
Right. So you shared, I guess, five or six very generic questions, and I have myself experienced those questions very frequently. And yeah, we need to be very prepared, getting away with our nervousness and sharing whatever we have on the plate. And yeah, the last question is always tricky for me, like what is the next self-improvement area? So that's why I was smiling, like, okay, now what? I was just assuming that you would not be asking the same question, but here it goes. What is the area for improvement? Because that's one of the favorite questions that interviewers ask, right? We just want to know whether you are that a growth mindset person, or you think that you have already achieved what you had to.
Right. And Anand, I also believe that usually we have a timeline of 30 to 45 minutes to assess any candidate, right? So what happens usually, I'll give a weightage to, 3 to 4 probably agile questions, 3 to 4 a behavioral, two probably two is was extensive in my example, right? So maybe 2 or 3 on a behavioral, 2 or 3 on a domain, but I'm for sure that I'll be pitching in 3 to 4 generic questions, which can be, googled a lot, and it is going to be a common across all the domains. It's not only going to be IT specific or telecom specific or state specific or any other industry. It is going to be very generic in nature. So if we are seeing that there are 10 or 12 questions overall in the interview, the 40 percentage of the weightage are having to this generic questions, and this can be framed very well, very fine, and that actually helps candidate to boost up their confidence and get more engaged into the discussion.
So here you go, listeners. Ritesh has shared with you five very generic questions, and the probability of that being asked in your next interview is very high because, yeah, irrespective of which industry, which domain you are in, those five questions will be there. And I can also vouch onto that because when I interview, these are very generic questions that you ask. The answer that you provide is a differentiator. Because yeah, you can Google the question, you can get the answer from ChatGPT, but interviewers can find out whether you have truly been there, done that.
Right. To answer that point, Anand, I believe that self-introspection is very important, and any candidate who's, uh, trying to frame these questions and answers, it's just good to go back to your experiences and frame accordingly. Then it will give a next level of confidence to any candidate, where they can answer more better. They can develop that confidence during the interview. They can exclude the nervousness and, get more score, because obviously the communication and confidence speaks.
Hmm. So while you're giving advices, Ritesh, this podcast will be listened by many aspiring product owners and scrum masters. What advice would you give them for those who are preparing for the next interview?
To reiterate, one of them, and that I believe, is build the core competence. What exactly we are being interviewed for, say scrum master, product owner, or business analyst. Once that core competence is developed, then add on the decoratives. Apart from that, the first level of shortlisting is obviously on the resume. So it's very important to keep the resume very improvised and keep it simple, precise, and short. Nobody has time to go through the descriptives, what exactly you are doing, what are the types of process operations you are handling. Just keep it simple. For example, as a product you have to be a part of, product backlog meetings, the refinements, strategies, vision. Okay, so these are the key skills and the core competence of the product owner, right? Whereas for a business analysis, requirement gathering, stakeholder management, requirement elicitations, requirement walkthroughs, at times UATs. So these are the core things. So just keep these key pointers in your resume. Apart from that, yes, agile, scrum ceremonies, and your day-to-day product owner, scrum master responsibilities should be highlighted very well and in a very simpler form. So these days, AI tools are helping us a lot. I urge all the candidates to use these tools effectively so that they can make their resume very effective, because that's the first line of elimination. Usually, if the resumes are not good, at times we discard those resume. But there has been a scenarios where we took a faith of leap, and we interviewed that candidate, and candidate was really having a very good exposure. It's just their resume was not well drafted.
Great advices, Ritesh. Very keen for emphasize on your resume, because to be honest, nowadays we don't have patience to read 5 pages of what you have done since you first joined the industry. What is more relevant to the job description that we have right now?
Precisely.
Wow, there's so many great insights that Ritesh you have shared, and it was really profound hearing directly from the interviewer to understand what are they looking for from the prospective candidates. There's a lot going inside the interviewer's psyche, and hearing directly from you, Ritesh, I'm very sure there was a lot to take away for the candidate and prospective product owners. Uh, Thank you everyone for listening to this, and the recording of this video will be available within a week and can be accessed from our website targetagility.com, and you can check that under the events tab. So, with that, I wish everyone the best of luck for your career progression and looking forward to having you in our next event. And yes, do consider Target Agility as your learning partner for all your Agile certifications. And yes, keep growing and accelerate your career. Goodbye, friends. And thank you, Ritesh, for spending your valuable time and sharing some of the great insights.
Thank you, Anand, and thanks to everyone who has joined, and all the best to all our aspiring and product owners who are doing very well in their career.
Thanks once again, and goodbye.